which dogs were used to help locate that missing person?
No.
Did you ever receive any training, either during your 20 years as a detective or prior to your 20 years as a detective, that involved the usage of canines, or how to use canines in investigations?
No.
Did you have a canine unit in Grosse Pointe Farms?
When?
The night of the incident, January 12, 2010.
Thank you.
No.
You sure?
Yes.
And just so that we're clear, I'm not asking you if there was a canine working that evening. I'm asking if there was a canine unit employed by the city of Grosse Pointe Farms on January 12, 2010.
No.
Do you know if Grosse Pointe Farms ever had a canine unit?
Prior to the 12th of June 2010?
Ever?
Well, I object to the relevancy of any canine unit that may have been available at any time prior to them that wasn't available then, or subsequent to them that wasn't available then. You may answer the question.
Objection is noted. And again, the question is, do you know if Grosse Pointe Farms ever had a canine unit?
I've been retired for about 5 years. I don't live in this area anymore, but I do read the Grosse Pointe News. And I've seen in there that Grosse Pointe Farms, I believe, even now has a canine dog.
But that was not the case when you were there, correct?
That is correct.
The entire time that you worked for Grosse Pointe Farms, Grosse Pointe Farms never had a canine unit, correct?
Correct.
So let me ask you this. The several investigations that you participated in that involved canines, whose canines were those, if you recall?
I recall at times it could be the Detroit Police Department or the Michigan State Police.
Would you have to call them, or would they be advised some other way that they were needed?
Our department would call them.
What kind of things would you want to know before you called them?
In most instances, it was involving a suspect where they may have, for example, ran out of a house, bailed out of a car. Usually involved crimes.
And so if a person runs out of a car, what would the canine do to assist you?
Canine unit would show up. They would have the dog usually enter the car and see if he could pick up a scent from
Scent of what?
a person in the car.
And then what?
They would attempt to track.
So you are familiar with dogs scenting human beings and tracking them down, correct?
Yes.
If that would have been done in this case, wouldn't that have helped you conclude where Joann Matouk Romain ended up?
As I said, I was very comfortable in what was happening that night, and we believed she was in the water.
So comfortable that you didn't even feel it was necessary to ask for canines,
I
right?
was very comfortable how the scene was being handled.
The Coast Guard was there, you had a dive team in the water, in very cold water, right?
Yes, it was very cold.
In fact, they had to leave the water because it was too cold for them to stay in for an extended period of time, correct?
I was actually surprised how long they could stay in.
And yet, even though the Coast Guard was involved, the dive team was involved, all 30 units were involved, correct?
I was told that there were several units at the scene.
Still, you were so comfortable with your conclusion that Joann Matouk Romain was in the water that you didn't feel it was necessary to ask for a canine unit from either MSP or DPD.
Object to the form of your question. You're badgering a witness.
Is that true?
Go ahead, you can answer.
Again, I was very comfortable that the scene was being handled the way it was. The officer's experience at the scene, my experience, and the evidence we had at the scene, that a person was in the water.
If you would have wanted canines, could you have asked for them?
Yes,
So it was your choice to not ask for them, right?
yes.
Did the missing woman's family ever ask you why there weren't canines there?
When?
On the evening in question on January 12, 2010, and going into the early morning of January 13th, 2010.
No,
Michelle, sitting to my right, never asked you if you could call in some dogs?
I don't recall seeing Michelle there that night.
How about another family member? Were any family members there that night that you recall seeing?
I don't recall seeing any family members that night.
Do you know whether or not any of the other officers there spoke to anybody in the family on the scene that evening?
In reviewing Sergeant Trubiano's report, I believe he spoke to a Joann Matouk.
So as far as you know, that's the only family member who appeared that evening on the scene?
To my knowledge, best of my knowledge, yes.
How long were you on the scene for?
Say approximately an hour and a half.
When did you leave?
Say approximately 1 o'clock in the morning.
Did you review any documents prior to coming here to testify?
I'm sorry, repeat that?
Did you review any documents prior to coming here to testify?
Yes.
I see you have a stack of papers in front of you right now. Can you please go through them one at a time and identify what they are?
Sure. All of these papers I received from my attorney. First is the first set of interrogatories. Second is the second set of interrogatories. This is the report. I was advised that it's a new style report. It didn't exist when I worked here. This is my notes and other notes from officers. These are reports from Canada.
I'm sorry, when were those notes written?
Different times.
Can I please see them? Is there an objection?
No, but again, you've had these materials for months.
What's next?
These are reports from Canada. This is a written statement from Paul Hawk. This is a copy of a report from Grosse Pointe Woods, made by Paul Hawk. This is the original style reports. This would be my report. This is a fax cover sheet, miscellaneous papers on fax that I sent to Grosse Pointe Woods. These are some copies of reports from Grosse Pointe Woods. These are copies of the exhibit that have been given to me by my attorney.
What is that document?
Copies of the exhibits.
Oh, the exhibits previously entered in other depositions, okay.
These are miscellaneous reports and statements, lien regarding this case. This is the second amended complaint. This is the first complaint. These are some more documents relating to this case.
Can I please take a look at that?
Sure.
Handing you right now something that's titled video log. Times all end with a Z in the far right column, correct?
I'm not familiar with this radio log, but they do look like they could be military times.
Do you know what Z is?
No.
Did you review any other documents prior to coming here to testify?
Reviewed some videos. I reviewed some photographs, all provided by my attorney.
Which videos did you review?
There were some news videos.
Some what?
News videos. I reviewed the videos of Lieutenant Rogers' deposition. I reviewed the video of Lieutenant Rosati's deposition.
You felt that it was important to review the other defendant's testimony before you came here to testify?
Yes.
Why is that?
Well, let me just object to any of his reasonings why he's a party to this case. Had things been accomplished as originally scheduled, he was here, and he has a right to sit in anyone's deposition, and for you to imply that there's something wrong with any party reviewing any other party's testimony in print, testimony in braille, testimony on video is more than objectionable to me. I think it's unethical.
I didn't imply that there was anything wrong with it.
You sure
I
have.
simply asked him why he reviewed it. There's nothing implied there at all. And I would move to strike your entire objection from the record as being baseless and in and of itself possibly unethical for poisoning the record like that. Can you please tell me why it is that you reviewed those videos?
It was on the advice of my attorney.
Okay. Did you want to make sure that your testimony lines up with their testimony?
Don't answer that. You've already told him you reviewed something on advice of your attorney. It's confidential as to anything else that you know about that video. Move on.
Aside from the reason that your attorney advised you to watch those videos, is there perhaps a second reason that you watched them, that you wanted to make sure that your testimony aligned with their testimony? Don't tell me anything that's confidential or privileged.
Well, I don't lack a form of foundation. I mean, he's never testified there was any ulterior motive.
Are you instructing me to not answer that question, Mr. Kabir?
Could I have your question right back again?
Was there a second reason? Question.
Tell you what, I think I recall. If you had some secondary reason for watching the videos that you've testified to, as he's now asking you about, you may tell him about that.
I if I understand the question, I would review it for my own purposes because this case is over 5 years old.
So watching their testimony help refresh your recollection for today's purposes?
Looking at all the materials that were provided to me helped me refresh my recollection.
Fair enough. Did you, on January 13th, 2010, speak to any witnesses? Possible witnesses.
On January 13th?
Yes.
Yes.
And if you, what we can do to make life simple is, I believe I have here a copy of your report. Number 1 followed by a whole bunch of zeros, 14.4.
Yeah, I'm going off the new style report that was provided me.
Okay. You spoke to a Miss Alt, correct?
Yes.
January 13th, 2010 at 8:30 a.m., correct?
Yes.
And you wrote that she reported seeing a light-colored crossover vehicle, possibly a Mercedes brand, parked on the church side of the Grosse Pointe Academy grounds at approximately 7:50 p.m. Did she tell you that?
Yes.
Did you believe that that was suspicious at all?
No, but it was information that I was going to record.
Had this been a missing person and not, in your opinion, a suicide, would that have been something that you would have pursued?
Check the form and foundation. You haven't laid any foundation that at that point in time he thought there was anything such as a suicide, as you are suggesting.
I think he already testified that he was pretty sure that she had walked into the water the night before and had not been recovered. Wasn't that your testimony?
Well, then you just object to the form of the question. That doesn't imply that there's suicide. There's multiple reasons someone could enter the water in addition to wishing to end their own life. You may answer the question if you can.
Repeat the question, please.
Can you, based on what your attorney just said, can you please tell me some of the other reasons that somebody would walk into a freezing cold lake late at night other than to end her own life?
In my opinion, there could have been a couple of reasons.
Such as?
1 could have been a suicide. 2 could have been a medical reason. 3 could have been an accident.
Okay. One way or another, that person's in the water, right?
It appeared that that person went into the water.
And did not return, right?
I didn't see any evidence of a person returning.
And we already established that you were very comfortable that this person went into the water and stayed in the water, correct?
Argumentative.
Didn't we already establish that?
Yes.
Yes?
Yes, I was very comfortable somebody was in the water.
Okay. Had you not been so comfortable that this person actually walked into the water, would you have taken Miss Alt's statement to consider the possibility that maybe there was some foul play?
No, what I documented from Miss Alt's conversation with me is what you see. She didn't believe anything was suspicious at the time.
Did you believe anything was suspicious?
No.
You then spoke to a Nancy Barrick at 9:35 a.m.?
Yes.
And she told you that she thought Ms. Romain appeared distraught and paranoid, correct?
Yes.
After speaking to Ms. Barrick, did you conclude that, let me ask you this, at any point did you conclude that Joann Matouk Romain suffered from depression?
I never concluded she suffered from depression.
Did any evidence ever lead you to believe that she suffered from depression?
I had no information she suffered from depression.
That she was mentally ill?
No,
No?
I had no information that she was mentally ill.
Did you ever convey information to any other law enforcement agencies at all that you believed Joann Matouk Romain suffered from either mental illness or depression?
No,
Did you ever advise the Coast Guard that Joann Matouk Romain suffered from mental illness or depression?
I don't believe I had any conversations with the American Coast Guard.
Do you know who it is who corresponded with the Coast Guard?
No,
Do you know who would know? Is there anybody that you can tell me, the name of a human being, who could tell me all the people who communicated with the Coast Guard?
Talking about the United States Coast Guard.
The United States Coast Guard.
Thank you.
I don't know who communicated with the United States Coast Guard.
Is that something that you would expect would be in police reports?
I believe I reviewed the reports that Lieutenant Rogers requested the Coast Guard.
If somebody contacts the Coast Guard, the United States Coast Guard, would you expect that officer to include in his or her report that he or she did in fact contact the Coast Guard and what information was conveyed?
It would either be in a report or on the radio log.
Did you review the Coast Guard report?
I looked at the Coast Guard report.
Did Michelle Romain tell anybody at Grosse Pointe Farms that she had been looking for her mother since 5 o'clock p.m. on January 12, 2010?
I don't recall any information like that.
I'm handing you, it's already been marked as Rogers 5. I'm sorry, let me start with this one. I'm going to hand you what's been marked as Rogers 2 and Rogers 5. I just have them back for 1 second so I can direct you to exactly what I want to talk about. The very top, Rogers 2. Do you see that the first 3 lines?
Rosati's too?
I'm sorry, Rosati 2, correct.
Okay, I'm sorry, what do you want me to look at?
The first 3 lines.
First 3 lines. It appears January 10. I'm assuming the 10 is the year. Please contact the car owners. Word is blacked out. She stated that her mom dropped her off at a residence and then left to go to the church around 5 p.m. She has been looking for her mother since 5 p.m.
Now, did Michelle Romain or her sister or anybody in her family tell you that they were tell you or any of your officers, as far as you know, that they were looking for their mother since 5 o'clock p.m. that day?
Nobody in Miss Romain's family told me she was missing since 5 o'clock, and I don't recall any officers saying she was missing since 5 o'clock.
Do you have any idea who possibly could have conveyed this information to the United States Coast Guard?
No.
And you what's been marked as Rogers 5 now. I want you to look at this paragraph over here.
Was that 8 or Rogers?
This one's actually Rogers.
Rogers number 5.
The first one is Rosati 2, this one's Rogers 5. Do you see the part where it says that footprints led from the car onto the ice and then to the water's edge?
Yes,
But that's not really what you observed, is it?
it's not what I observed.
Do you have any idea who told that to the United States Coast Guard?
No.
Do you know whether or not any other department other than Grosse Pointe Farms was in contact with the United States Coast Guard that evening?
I don't have any knowledge of any other department contacting the Coast Guard.
Had some other department contacted the United States Coast Guard, would you know?
Form foundation speculation. Go ahead, answer.
I don't believe I would know.
Were there any other departments that were there that night other than the United States Coast Guard and the Grosse Pointe Farms Public Safety?
I don't believe so.
Was the water frozen? Was it ice or was it water? Close to the embankment when you arrived
On what day?
on January 12, 2010.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'd have to say both. I observed ice and open water.
Was it open water for 100 feet or was there ice mixed in with it?
There was what appeared to be a shelf approximately 3/8 wide along the break wall, and there was a large area of mostly open water, and further out an ice pack.
Was there broken ice directly where the point of entry was presumed to be?
It appeared that the shelf had a jagged edge. It indicated it may have been broken at some point.
Was there a hole in the ice several feet offshore?
I don't recall seeing ice several feet offshore. As I stated, it was open water.
Handing you Rogers 5 again, and this time I want you to look right over there where it says there is a hole. Can you just read that sentence, please?
Sure. There is a hole in the ice several feet offshore and no footprints leading back from the hole.
Any idea who could have told the United States Coast Guard that information?
No,
But again, that was not something that you observed as well, correct?
I did not observe that.
Some months later, Ms. Romain's body was found, correct?
It was located on March 20th of 2010.
How did you find out on March 20th, 2010? That her body had been found?